My brother begged to borrow my fully restored vintage car for one night, then vanished for 3 days. When he finally returned laughing with the wrecked vehicle, expecting me to clean up his mess, I didn't scream. I silently initiated a legal and financial eviction that ended his free ride forever. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. I don't think I had slept in 72 hours. My eyes felt like they were filled with sand, gritty and burning, as I stared out the front bay window of my living room. The street lamp outside flickered, casting long, dancing shadows across the driveway, the empty driveway. It was 3:14 a.m. on a Tuesday. My brother Leo had taken the keys to my 1969 convertible on Friday evening. He had sworn, with his hands clasped together in a pleading gesture that looked practiced, that he only needed it for 4 hours max. He had a date, he said. He needed to impress a girl who was out of his league. I had hesitated. That car wasn't just a vehicle to me. It was 5 years of late nights, grease-stained weekends, and nearly every spare dollar of my architect's salary. It was my sanctuary, my art project, my baby. But I gave him the keys. I gave him the keys because I am Lydia, the big sister, the reliable one, the one who fixes things. Now, 3 days later, my calls were going straight to voicemail. His location sharing had been turned off an hour after he left my house. My stomach had been in knots since Saturday morning, oscillating between terror that he was dead in a ditch somewhere and a simmering, hot rage that he was ignoring me. Then I saw the headlights. They swung haphazardly around the corner, cutting through the darkness. The engine didn't purr the way I had tuned it to, it sputtered. It coughed. My heart hammered against my ribs as I watched the car mount the curb, my curb, before correcting and jerking into the driveway. I didn't run out, I couldn't. I felt frozen, my hand gripping the curtain so hard my knuckles were white. The driver's door opened. Leo tumbled out. He didn't look injured. He didn't look like a victim of a crime. He looked messy. His shirt was half untucked, his hair was a bird's nest, and as he steadied himself against the doorframe of my beloved car, he threw his head back and laughed. It was a loud, raucous sound that cut through the silence of the neighborhood. He pulled his phone out, seemingly finishing a conversation I couldn't hear, and slapped the roof of the car hard. I finally found the strength to move. I unlocked the front door and stepped out onto the porch. The cool night air hit my face, but I felt feverish. Leo looked up, squinting against the porch light. "Lydia, Lyd, you're up." He stumbled a few steps forward, grinning. "Oh man, what a weekend. You would not believe the journey I've been on." I walked down the steps, my eyes bypassing him completely and landing on the car. My knees almost buckled. The pristine, custom-mixed midnight blue paint, which I had buffed by hand just last week, was gouged along the entire passenger side, a deep, jagged white scar revealing the metal beneath. The front bumper was hanging off on the left side, held on by what looked like duct tape and hope. The custom side mirror I had sourced from a collector in Germany was gone, just a dangling wire left in its wake. "Leo," I whispered, the sound barely escaping my throat. He waved a hand dismissively, swaying slightly. I know, had a little scrape in the city. Some idiot parked too close. But listen," he giggled, leaning in close, smelling of stale beer and something sweet like energy drinks. "The date? It turned into a weekend trip. She loved the car, Lyd. She absolutely loved it. I told her I restored it myself." He waited for me to smile. He expected me to roll my eyes, sigh, and ask if he was hungry. That was the script. That was how it always went. I walked to the car, running a trembling finger over the deep gouge in the paint. I looked inside. The cream leather seats had a dark, sticky stain on the passenger side that looked like red wine. There were fast food wrappers matted into the floor mats. "It's totaled," I said, my voice flat. The structural damage to the wheel well looked significant. The axle looked bent. "Don't be dramatic," Leo scoffed, his mood shifting instantly from jovial to annoyed. "It's just a few scratches. You can buff it out. You're good at that stuff. Besides, he yawned, stretching his arms over his head, I'm exhausted. I'm gonna crash at your place tonight. My keys are somewhere. He started walking past me toward my front door, expecting me to follow, expecting me to make up the guest bed. He laughed again, a short, sharp chuckle. God, you look like a ghost, Lydia. Lighten up. It's just a cop. Arr. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud snap. It was quiet, final, and irreversible. It was the sound of a bridge collapsing into the sea. I looked at his back, at the arrogance in his stride, and I felt a coldness wash over me that I had never felt before. The panic of the last 3 days evaporated, replaced by a clarity so sharp it hurt. The betrayal, I thought, watching him reach for my door handle, was worse than the destruction. I stayed in the driveway for a long time after Leo went inside. I could hear him rummaging around in my kitchen, the familiar clink of the refrigerator door opening, the sound of a bag of chips being torn open. He was making himself at home, just as he had done for his entire 26 years of existence. I circled the car, cataloging the damage with a detached, clinical eye. Front bumper, destroyed. Passenger door, deeply keyed or scraped against a concrete pillar. Rear quarter panel, dented inward, likely from backing into something solid. Interior, smelled of smoke, spilled alcohol, and neglect. Odometer, he had put over 800 miles on it, 800 miles. He said he was going to dinner in the city, 10 miles away. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was 3:30 a.m. It was our mother, Matilda. I stared at the screen. Leo must have texted her that he was back. I answered, putting the phone to my ear without saying a word. Oh, thank goodness. Matilda's voice was shrill, breathless. Lydia, is he there? He texted me he's safe. I've been worried sick. He's here, I said, my voice sounding robotic to my own ears. He's eating my food. Oh, wonderful. Poor boy, he must be starving, she gushed. He told me he had such a stressful time, getting stuck in traffic and having phone issues. You know how sensitive he is to stress, Lydia. I hope you aren't being too hard on him about being a little late. A little late, I looked at the wrecked convertible. He was gone for 3 days, Mom, and he destroyed my car. Destroyed? She let out a dismissive huff. Lydia, you always exaggerate. He said it was a little fender bender. Accidents happen. He's your brother. He's safe, that's what matters. Cars can be fixed. Family is forever. He lied to me, I said, looking at the dangling wire where the mirror used to be. He took my property, vanished, and brought it back wrecked. He's laughing about it. He uses laughter to cope, Matilda snapped, her tone hardening. He's probably mortified deep down. Don't make him feel worse, Lydia. You know how fragile his confidence is right now with his career trying to take off. Just call your insurance, get it fixed, and stop making a mountain out of a molehill. Andrew and I will come over for lunch tomorrow to smooth things over. Andrew, no, I asked, referring to our father. Of course. Your father says you should be proud Leo felt comfortable enough to come to you when he was in trouble. It shows he trusts you. I hung up. I didn't say goodbye. I just lowered the phone and ended the call. They were already rewriting the narrative. In the family mythology, Leo was the adventurer, the free spirit who sometimes made messes, and I was the custodian, the one who followed behind with a broom and a checkbook. I walked back into the house. Leo was sprawled on my sofa, boots still on, crumbling chips onto my rug. He looked up at me, his eyes half closed. Mom called you, he mumbled. She's so annoying, I told her I was fine. You wrecked the suspension, Leo, I said, standing over him. I can see the camber on the rear wheel is off. That's thousands of dollars. He groaned, rolling his eyes. Okay, put it on my tab. When my channel blows up, I'll buy you a Ferrari. Chill out. You have that fancy insurance, right? Just tell them someone hit it while it was parked. Easy. He closed his eyes, dismissing me. I'm gonna crash. Don't wake me up before noon. I watched him fall asleep within seconds, his breathing deepening into a heavy, rhythmless snore. He looked so peaceful. He truly believed that tomorrow would be just like every other day. He believed that we would have lunch with Matilda and Andrew, that I would lecture him, he would apologize half-heartedly, Mom would tell me to be the bigger person, and then I would call the body shop. He believed his safety net was made of steel. I walked into my home office and sat down at my desk. The rage I had felt earlier had cooled into something solid and heavy, like a stone in my gut. I opened my laptop. I didn't open the insurance portal. Instead, I opened a folder labeled Personal Finance. Leo, Matilda, and Andrew thought they understood the dynamic. They thought my power came from my willingness to yell, to lecture, and then eventually to forgive. They thought my love was an infinite resource they could mine without consequence. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. I wasn't just his sister. I wasn't just the owner of the car. I see. Licked on a document titled Residential Lease Agreement, 404 Oak Street. Then, I clicked on another PDF titled Guarantor Agreement, Leo Miller Personal Loan. I looked at the dates. I looked at the clauses regarding criminal activity and destruction of property. Leo thought he had just ruined a car. He didn't realize he had just voided the unspoken contract of his entire lifestyle. To understand why this hurts so much, you have to understand the car. And to understand the car, you have to understand the role I was forced to play in my family. My parents, Matilda and Andrew, were perfectly nice people to the outside world. They were charitable, smiling, suburban pillars of the community. But within our four walls, they operated a monarchy, and Leo was the prince. Leo was born 6 years after me. He was a miracle baby, born premature and sickly. From the moment he took his first breath, my parents decided that Leo was too fragile for the world. He was never disciplined. If he broke a neighbor's window, it was because the neighbor shouldn't have put a house there. If he failed a test, the teacher was incompetent. I, on the other hand, was the strong one. I was the independent Lydia. I put myself through college. I built a career in architecture, navigating a male-dominated field with grit and precision. I never asked for money. I never asked for help. The car, a 1969 Carmen Ghia, was my trophy. I bought the chassis from a scrapyard 5 years ago. It was a rusted shell. Every weekend, while Leo was out partying or networking for his vague career as an influencer and lifestyle entrepreneur, I was in my garage. I learned to weld. I learned to stitch upholstery. I learned how to tune a dual carburetor engine. That car represented the one thing in my life that was entirely mine. It was the physical manifestation of my hard work, my patience, and my attention to detail. Traits my family claimed to value but only ever exploited in me. Leo, at 26, had never held a job for longer than 3 months. He claimed regular work stifled his creativity. He had a YouTube channel with 300 subscribers where he posted videos reviewing luxury products he couldn't afford or offering life coaching advice. Yet he lived in a beautiful downtown loft. How? Because I owned the condo. I had bought it as an investment property, and when Leo needed a break 3 years ago, Matilda and Andrew guilted me into letting him live there for a few months at a reduced rate. A rate of $0. He had never paid rent, not once. Whenever I brought it up, Matilda would sigh. "Lydia, you earn so much. Why are you so greedy? He's your brother. He's finding himself." And Andrew would chime in, "He's on the verge of a breakthrough, Lyd. Don't pull the rug out from under him now." So I became the bank. I co-signed his loan for his camera equipment. I paid the HOA fees on the condo. I paid for his cell phone plan because it was on my family bundle. I did it because I wanted to be loved. I wanted to be the good daughter. But standing in my office that night, looking at the spreadsheet of expenses I had covered for Leo over the last 3 years, totaling nearly $40,000 in lost rent and bills, I realized I hadn't been a good sister. I had been a drug dealer. I was supplying the addiction of entitlement. I heard Leo stir in the living room. He shouted out, "Lydia, do you have any Gatorade? I'm parched." The tone was demanding, expectant. It was the voice of a man who believed he was the main character of the universe. I didn't answer. I looked at the lease agreement on my screen. I had drafted it formally 3 years ago, even though my parents laughed at me for being too corporate. They had made Leo sign it as a joke. "Sure, sis, whatever makes you feel like a boss," he had said, scribbling his signature without reading it. I read Clause 14b. Immediate termination of lease upon tenant engaging in criminal activity or causing significant financial damage to the landlord or landlord's property. I read Clause 19. Guarantor holds the right to withdraw support from credit lines immediately upon breach of trust. The sun was starting to rise, casting a gray light over the wrecked car in the driveway. The influencer was asleep on my couch. The enablers were sleeping soundly in their house, preparing their excuses for lunch. They thought the conflict was about a bumper. They thought the antagonist was bad luck or traffic. But the real antagonist was the dynamic itself. It was the belief that I existed to serve them. I picked up my phone. I didn't call the insurance company. I called the non-emergency police line. "Dispatch, this is not an emergency," I said, my voice steady and cold. "I need an officer to come to my residence to file a report regarding grand theft auto and destruction of property over $5,000. "Is the perpetrator still on the scene, ma'am?" the dispatcher asked. I looked through. The open door at my brother, who was drooling onto my velvet throw pillow. "Yes," I said, "he's sleeping on my couch." The silence in the house was heavy, a physical weight that pressed against my eardrums. The only sound was the rhythmic, oblivious snoring of my brother from the living room and the faint hum of my computer fan. I had called the police, but they had given me an ETA of 45 minutes. It was a non-emergency priority, they said. That gave me time. I didn't waste it pacing or crying. I felt a strange, vibrating energy in my fingertips, the kind of hyperfocus I usually reserved for finalizing complex blueprints hours before a deadline. I sat at my desk and opened a new browser window. If I was going to burn the bridge, I needed to make sure I wasn't standing on it when it fell. I started with the bank accounts. Because I had co-signed Leo's business loan for his influencer startup, I had full access to view the transaction history. I hadn't looked in months, trusting him when he said he was breaking even. I logged in. The balance was $4.12. I scrolled through the last 3 days of transactions. While my car was missing, while my calls were being ignored, Leo had been busy. Friday, 8:45 p.m., $120 Liquor Barn. Friday, 11:30 p.m., $240 The Velvet Lounge, VIP entry. Saturday, 2:15 a.m., $85 Uber. Wait, why in Uber if he had my car? I noted this down. Saturday, 10:00 a.m., $15.99, Hangover Helper Pharmacy. Sunday, 4:00 p.m., $450, Supreme Detailing and Tint. I paused. Supreme Detailing? If he had paid $400 for detailing on Sunday, why did the car look like it had been through a demolition derby on Tuesday morning? I opened Instagram. I was blocked on his main account. He claimed my boomer energy cramped his style, but I had created a burner account months ago to keep an eye on him. I searched for his handle at Leo Life Official. His story ring was lit up like a Christmas tree. I clicked it. The first clip was from Friday. He was sitting in the driver's seat of my convertible, the top down. The caption read, "New whip alert. Hard work pays off. Blessed grind set." He was implying it was his. He was revving the engine at a red light, the tachometer redlining. My stomach lurched. That engine was vintage. You couldn't treat it like a modern sports car. I clicked to the next story. Saturday. He was in a parking lot somewhere. A group of people I didn't recognize were sitting on the hood, sitting on the custom aluminum hood that dents if you look at it wrong. They were holding red plastic cups. Leo was standing on the driver's seat, standing on the leather, pouring champagne into someone's mouth. I took a screenshot. Then the Sunday posts. This was the smoking gun. He wasn't on a date. He was at a content house meetup 3 hours north. There was a video of him trying to drift the car in a gravel lot. The caption, "Drifting the classic. She handles rough, but we tamed the beast." In the video, you could hear the sickening crunch of the suspension bottoming out as he hit a pothole. The camera shook, and Leo laughed, yelling, "Whoops, that sounded expensive." I felt a tear slide down my cheek, but it wasn't sadness. It was pure, distilled fury. He hadn't just been careless, he had been abusive. He had treated my most prized possession, the symbol of my independence, as a prop for his internet fantasy. I saved every video. I screen-recorded every story. I downloaded the transaction history. Then I went to the printer. I printed the screenshots. I printed the bank statements showing he was using the loan money I was liable for parties. And finally, I printed 3 copies of a document I had prepared years ago but never had the heart to serve. Notice to quit, termination of tenancy. I looked at the clock. The police were 5 minutes away. I walked into the kitchen and made a pot of coffee. The smell wafted into the living room. I heard the sofa springs squeak. "Lid," Leo's voice was thick with sleep. "Is that coffee? Pour me a cup, would you? Light and sweet." I poured a single cup, black. I took a sip, staring at him over the rim of the mug. "You need to wake up, Leo," I said softly. Why? What time is it?" He sat up, rubbing his face. He looked at me, and for a second the lack of warmth in my eyes seemed to register. He frowned. "Why are you looking at me like that? I told you I'll pay for the detail. My friend owns a shop, he'll hook us up." "Your friend at Supreme Detailing?" I asked. "The one you paid $450 to on Sunday before you wrecked it again." Leo froze, his hand stopped rubbing his eyes. Were you snooping on me?" "I was investigating," I corrected. "There's a difference." "You're crazy," he sneered, standing up. "You're actually crazy. It's a car, Lydia. I'm your brother. You're acting like I killed someone. I'm going home. This vibe is toxic." He reached for his J. "Ack it." "You can't go home," I said, taking another sip of coffee. "Watch me." "No, I mean you literally can't," I said calmly, "because the police are pulling into the driveway right now." Leo froze halfway to the door. He turned to look at me, his mouth open in genuine confusion. "What?" "I reported the car stolen," I said. "Or rather, unauthorized use resulting in grand theft. And since you're here and the car is destroyed, they're here to take a statement." "You called the cops on me?" His voice cracked. It went high like a child's. "On your brother." "I called the cops on the person who stole my car," I said. The doorbell rang. Leo stared at the door as if it were a portal to hell. He looked back at me, his face draining of color, panic finally piercing his arrogance. "Lydia, don't answer that," he hissed, rushing toward me. "Tell them it was a mistake. Tell them I had permission. If I get a record, it ruins my brand deals. I have a sponsorship pending with a watch company." "You don't have a sponsorship," I said, walking past him. "You have $4 in your bank account and a drinking problem." I opened the door. 2 officers stood there. One was older, with a weary face. The other was younger, scanning the wrecked car in the driveway with raised eyebrows. "Ma'am, you called about a 1969 Carmen Ghia," the older officer asked. "Yes, officer," I said, stepping aside. "That's the owner of the vehicle in the driveway. And this," I gestured to Leo, who was standing by the sofa, looking like a deer in headlights, "is the person who took it without permission on Friday and returned it in that condition this morning." The officers stepped inside. The air in the room changed instantly. It wasn't a family dispute anymore, it was an official inquiry. "Sir, can I see your ID?" the younger officer asked Leo. Leo fumbled for his wallet, his hands shaking. "Look, officers, this is a massive misunderstanding. My sister is she's very emotional. She's having a bad week. I borrowed the car. Family borrows things, right? It's a civil matter." He flashed that winning smile, the one that worked on Matilda, the one that worked on bartenders. The older officer didn't smile back. He looked at his notepad. The report says you took the keys under the pretense of a 4-hour loan on Friday evening and ceased communication until Tuesday morning. Is that correct? My phone died, Leo stammered. And I got caught up, but I brought it back. It's in the driveway. Bringing it back doesn't negate the unauthorized use, son, the officer said dryly. Especially given the condition of the vehicle. The owner is stating you did not have permission to keep it for 3 days. Leo spun on me. Lydia, tell them you gave me the keys. I looked him dead in the eye. I gave you the keys for a dinner date on Friday. I did not give you the keys to drive 300 miles to a content house, drift in a gravel lot, and stand on the upholstery with champagne. Leo's jaw dropped. How do you? I have the videos, I told the officer. I have evidence of him driving recklessly, endangering the vehicle and others. I want to press charges for the damages and the unauthorized use. Lydia, Leo screamed. It was a raw, ugly sound. Are you insane? Mom is going to kill you. We can discuss family dynamics later, the officer interrupted, stepping between us. Right now, ma'am, are you looking to have him arrested, or are you just looking for a police report for insurance purposes? It was the golden question. If I had him arrested, the family was over. If I just got the report, I had leverage. I looked at Leo. He was trembling, tears welling up in his eyes, not tears of remorse, but tears of self-pity. I want the report documented fully for criminal damage, I said. I want it on record that he admitted to taking it. If he agrees to pay for the damages in full, right now, I won't ask you to cuff him. But if he denies it, take him in. The officer looked at Leo. Well, son, you going to take responsibility for the damages? Leo looked trapped. I can't pay for that right now. I'm liquidating some assets. He has no assets, I cut in, but he has parents. Leo scrambled for his phone. I'm calling Mom. You're done, Lydia. You are so done. You think you're so smart. You just blew up the whole family over a scratch. Make the call, I said. He dialed, putting it on speaker immediately, desperate for an ally. Leo, Matilda's voice chirped. Did you have a nice nap? Mom, Leo wailed. Lydia called the police. They're in the living room. She's trying to have me arrested. There was a silence on the line so profound it felt like the phone had died. Then, a shriek. She did what? She's saying I stole the car. Officer, tell her. Mom, tell them I'm a good kid. Lydia Marie. Matilda's voice was distorted by the volume. Put the officer on the phone immediately. This is a misunderst. Anding, my daughter is hysterical. The officer looked at me, an eyebrow raised. I shook my head. The officer isn't going to talk to you, Mother, I said calmly toward the phone. This is an investigation. You and Dad better get over here and bring your checkbook. Because unless someone pays for this car by noon, Leo is facing a felony. I signaled the officer that the call was over. Leo was sobbing now, holding the phone to his chest. I hate you, he whispered. I actually hate you. That's fine, I replied, feeling lighter than I had in years. Because I'm done bankrolling you. My parents arrived in record time. Usually, it took them an hour to get anywhere, but they pulled up in 20 minutes, screeching to a halt behind the police cruiser. Andrew, my father, burst through the door first. He was red-faced, wearing his golf polo. Matilda was right behind him, clutching her purse like a shield. They didn't look at the car. They didn't look at me. They went straight to Leo, who was sitting on the ottoman, sulking while the officers finished their paperwork in the kitchen. Oh, my poor baby, Matilda cooed, wrapping her arms around a 26-year-old man. It's okay, Mommy's here. We'll fix this. Andrew marched up to me. He pointed a finger in my face. You send these officers away. Now, have you lost your mind, airing our dirty laundry to the police? Hello to you too, Dad, I said, leaning against the doorframe of my office. Did you see the car? I don't care about the damn car, Andrew shouted. It's metal. This is your brother's reputation. Do you know what happens if he gets a record? He can't get a job he doesn't apply for. I suggested. Don't get smart with me, Andrew snapped. You are being vindictive, you're jealous. You've always been jealous of Leo's spirit. You're boring, Lydia, and you hate that he's interesting. The insult landed, but it didn't pierce. It just confirmed everything I had suspected. To them, my stability was boring. My generosity was expected. The officers walked back into the room. All right, the older officer said. We have the report filed. Mr. Miller here is listed as the suspect for property damage. Ma'am, you have the case number. If you decide to pursue the theft charge later, you can contact the DA. For now, it's a civil matter regarding the restitution. Thank you, officers, I said. Officer, wait, Matilda cried. We can make this go away, right? If we pay her, can you rip up the report? It's a filed government record now, ma'am, the officer said, tipping his hat. Have a good day. They left, the door clicked shut. The silence that followed was suffocating. You ungrateful little witch, Matilda hissed, turning on me. The mask of the sweet suburban mom was gone. We raised you better than this, to betray your own blood. He betrayed me, I said, my voice rising for the first time. He took my car, lied to me for 3 days, wrecked it, and laughed in my face. And you, I pointed at them, enabled every second of it. He made a mistake, Andrew yelled. He's young. He is 26, I shouted back. I was a licensed architect at 26. I own this house at 26. And you hold it over our heads, Matilda screamed. You think you're so superior with your money and your house. Well, guess what? You're cold, you're unlovable. That's why you're alone and Leo has friends. That was the line. That was the moment the last tether snapped. I'm alone, I asked quietly. I'm alone because I've been too busy raising your son for you. I walked to my desk and picked up the stack of papers. Since I'm so cold, I said, walking back to the living room, let's make it official. I handed the first document to Andrew. This is the estimate for the repairs. It's roughly $12,000. The frame is bent. The paint is custom. If this isn't paid within 30 days, I will be suing Leo in small claims court, and I will win because I have his confession on police body cam. Andrew crumpled the paper. I'm not paying this. Fine, I said, then he pays. With what money? Leo scoffed from the couch. I'm broke. I know, I said. I handed him the second document. That's why you need to move. Leo looked at the paper. Notice to quit. What is this? He asked, his voice trembling. It's an eviction notice, I said. 30 days, I'm terminating your lease at the condo. I'm selling it. You can't do that, Matilda shrieked. Where will he live? With you, I smiled. He's your spirited boy, you take him. We turned the guest room into a craft room, Matilda cried. We don't have space. Make space, I said, because he's out on the 1st of the month. And one more thing, I said, pulling out the final document. The personal loan for his camera gear, the one I co-signed. I contacted the bank this morning while waiting for the cops. I invoked the guarantor's clause to freeze the line of credit due to misuse of funds. I threw the bank statements, showing the liquor and party expenses onto the coffee table. You told us that money was for lenses, Andrew said, looking at the statement. The Velvet Lounge, Leo, what is this? I was networking, Leo stammered. He's been partying on my credit for 3 years, I said. It stops today, the credit line is closed, the condo is being listed, the car repairs are due. I looked at my parents, who were staring at the bank statements with dawning horror. They realized the free ride wasn't just over for Leo, it was over for them. They wouldn't have their successful daughter covering the failures of their son anymore. They would have to deal with him themselves. You are destroying this family, Matilda wept. No, I said, opening the front door and gesturing for them to leave. I'm just resigning as the manager. Get out of my house. The silence that followed my parents' departure was the most expensive thing I had ever bought, and it was worth every penny. For the next 14 days, my phone did not stop ringing. Matilda called, Andrew called, Leo called from unknown numbers. I didn't block them. I simply watched the screen light up, vibrate, and go dark over and over again. It was a fascinating experiment in conditioning. However, I couldn't ignore the invitation to Aunt Deborah's 60th birthday jubilee. Deborah was Andrew's older sister, the matriarch of the Miller clan. She was a woman of steel and pearls, someone who respected success and despised drama. My parents had been banking on this event. I knew their strategy before I even RSVP'd. They would use the family gathering to corner me, to shame me into submission in front of the aunts and cousins, to paint me as the hysterical, cruel sister who had abandoned her vulnerable brother. They expected me to skip it. They expected me to hide. I put on my best dress, a structured emerald green sheath that made me feel like a warrior, and drove my rental car to the country club. When I walked into the banquet hall, the atmosphere shifted. It was subtle, like a change in air pressure before a storm. The gentle clinking of silverware slowed. Heads turned. I saw cousin Sarah whisper something to Uncle Mike. I saw my mother, Matilda, sitting at the head table, her eyes widening in genuine shock. Leo was there, of course. He was wearing a suit that I knew for a fact I had paid for 3 Christmases ago. He was holding court near the open bar, a glass of scotch in his hand, looking tragic and misunderstood. I grabbed a glass of sparkling water and made my way to Aunt Deborah. "Happy birthday, Aunt Deb," I said, handing her a small, tastefully wrapped box. She looked at me over her spectacles. "Lydia, I heard you weren't coming. Your mother said you were indisposed. Having a mental health crisis," I believe were her words. "I'm perfectly healthy, Aunt Deb," I smiled tightly. "Just busy with work." "And the car?" she asked, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Leo told everyone you crashed it in a fit of rage because you were jealous of his girlfriend." I felt the blood boil in my veins, hot and fast. So that was the narrative. I crashed the car. I was the unstable one. It was brilliant, really. It absolved Leo of the damage and painted me as dangerous, justifying their need to control me. "Is that what he said?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. Before Deborah could answer, Andrew appeared at my elbow. His grip on my arm was firm, painful. "What are you doing here?" he hissed, steering me away from the matriarch. "You are making a scene just by existing." "I was invited," I said, yanking my arm back. "Look," Andrew said, his face flushed. "We can fix this. Just go over to Leo, give him a hug, and tell everyone you guys made up. Tell them you're dropping the eviction. If you do that, we won't tell Uncle Mike about your episode." "My episode?" I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "You mean the episode where I realized I was an ATM with a pulse." "Lydia, please." Matilda had joined us now, tears already swimming in her eyes. "Don't ruin Deborah's night. Leo is pitching his business idea to Uncle Mike later. He needs investors. If they think there's a family feud, no one will invest. Just play along. For the family." "He's asking for money." I looked over at Leo. He was laughing, charming Uncle Mike, probably spinning a tale about high-yield returns on lifestyle vlogging. "He needs a start," Matilda pleaded, "since you cut him off." I looked at my parents. They looked small, desperate. They were willing to lie to their own siblings, to defraud their own family members, just to keep the golden child afloat. "I won't say a word," I lied. I waited until the toasts. Leo stood up. He clinked his spoon against his glass. The room went silent. He loved this. He loved the attention. "I just want to say," Leo began, his voice smooth, "happy birthday to Aunt Deb. And I also want to thank my parents for always standing by me. We've had a tough week. As some of you know, there's been some instability with my sister." He gestured sadly toward me. The whole room looked at me with pity. "But," Leo continued, brightening up, "I'm not letting it get me down. I'm launching a new media venture, and I'm so excited to share it with you all. It's about resilience. It's about rising above toxic energy." He raised his glass, "To family and to new beginnings." "To new beginnings," the room murmured. I stood up. "Lydia, sit down," Andrew hissed from across the table. "I'd like to add a toast," I said, my voice projecting clearly without a microphone. I walked to the front of the room, standing a few feet from Leo. He looked at me with panic in his eyes. He knew. To the truth, I said. I reached into my purse. I didn't have a projector, but I didn't need one. I had the stack of photos. The 8x10 glossy prints of the wrecked Carmen Gia, and the bank statements. Leo mentioned I had an episode, I said to the room. He told you I crashed my car. He told you I was unstable. I walked over to Aunt Deborah and placed the photo of the wrecked car in front of her. Then, I placed the police report on top of it. This is the police report filed 4 days ago, I said, loud enough for Uncle Mike to hear, listing Leo Miller as the suspect for grand theft and criminal mischief. Lydia, Matilda shrieked, jumping up. Stop it. I ignored her. I turned to Uncle Mike. And Leo is asking for investors. Before you write a check, you should probably see where his last loan went. I handed Uncle Mike the highlighted bank statements. The Velvet Lounge, Liquor Barn, Supreme Detailing to hide the evidence of a crash. Leo lunged for the papers. Give me that, she's forging them, she's crazy. But Uncle Mike, a retired forensic accountant, was faster. He pulled the papers back, scanning them with practiced speed. His face went purple. You spent $12,000 of a business loan on bottle service. Mike looked up at Leo, disgust written in every line of his face. It was marketing, Leo stammered. It was for the brand. And the car? Aunt Deborah held up the photo of my mangled convertible. You told me she drove it into a wall because she was off her meds, Leo. This report says you took it for 3 days and brought it back destroyed. She's lying, Leo shouted, his voice cracking. He looked around the room, but the pity was gone. The warmth was gone. The extended family wasn't looking at a victim anymore. They were looking at a liar. I'm evicting him, I said, addressing the room. And I'm suing him for the damages. I just thought you all should know before you gave him your retirement money. You be *TCH? Leo screamed. He threw his glass on the floor. It shattered, shards of crystal spraying across the dance floor. You ruined everything. You're jealous. You're just a jealous, lonely old maid. The silence returned, but this time it wasn't awkward. It was judgmental. Leo stood there, panting, his mask completely slipped. He looked ugly. He looked like a child who had been told no for the first time in his life. Get out, Aunt Deborah said. She didn't look at me. She looked at Leo. Aunt Deb, Leo whimpered. Get out of my party, she said, her voice like iron. And take your parents with you. If they raised a liar like you, I don't want them here either. Matilda gasped. Andrew looked like he was having a heart attack. But they didn't fight. They grabbed Leo by the arms and dragged him out of the hall, the sounds of his protests fading into the corridor. I stood there, my heart hammering in my chest. I thought I would feel guilty. I thought I would feel shame. But as I looked around the room, at my aunts and uncles who were finally looking at me with respect instead of pity, I only felt one thing. A relief. The eviction date arrived 30 days later, with the precision of a Swiss watch. I didn't go to the condo. I hired professional movers to pack Leo's things, mostly clothes, empty liquor bottles, and expensive camera gear he didn't know how to use, and transport them to my parents' house. I hired a locksmith to change the codes and the keys the second the movers were out. I listed the condo the next morning. It sold in 3 days. The market was hot, and without the smell of Leo's lifestyle permeating the walls, it was a prime asset. I took the proceeds from the sale, a significant sum, and I did 2 things. First, I sent the Carmen Gia to a specialist in California. I didn't try to fix it myself this time. I didn't have the heart for the labor, not yet. I paid the best in the business to restore it to better than factory condition. I told them to take their time. I wasn't in a rush. Second, I booked a trip. Not a family vacation where I paid for everyone and slept on the pull-out couch. A solo trip. To Italy. To see the architecture I had studied. Ed in books for a decade, but never had the funds to visit because I was paying for Leo's mistakes. But before I left, I had one loose end to tie up. I drove to my parents' house to drop off the final box of Leo's mail that had slipped through the forwarding service. The house looked different. The lawn was a little overgrown. The flower beds were weedy. I rang the bell. Andrew answered. He looked 10 years older. He was wearing sweatpants at 2:00 p.m. on a Tuesday. "Lydia," he said. He didn't invite me in. "Just dropping this off," I said, handing him the box. From inside the house, I heard shouting. "Mom, where is my other controller? You moved it when you cleaned." "I didn't touch it, Leo. Stop yelling at me. I have a migraine." "Well, if you didn't buy that cheap food, maybe my stomach wouldn't hurt and I wouldn't be yelling." Andrew winced at the noise. He looked at me, and for a fleeting second, I saw a flicker of envy in his eyes. He realized, finally, what I had been dealing with for 3 years. He realized that by enabling Leo, they hadn't saved him. They had only delayed the inevitable implosion. And now, the blast radius was their living room. "He's having a hard time adjusting," Andrew said quietly. "He's 26, Dad," I said. "He'll figure it out or he won't." Are you okay?" Andrew asked. It was the first time he had asked me that in years. "I'm going to Italy," I said. "I'm selling the condo. I closed the Bank of Lydia. I've never been better." "We miss you," he said. It sounded rehearsed. It sounded like he missed the checks. "I know," I said. "Good luck, Dad." I walked back to my rental car. As I opened the door, I heard Leo scream again from inside the house, something about the internet speed being too slow for his gaming career. I got in the car and drove away. I didn't look back in the rearview mirror. 6 months later, I got the call that the car was ready. I flew to California to pick it up. When they pulled the sheet off, it gleamed under the shop lights, a deep, midnight blue, flawless and perfect. It looked like it had never been touched by chaos. It looked like it had never been broken. I sat in the driver's seat. The smell of fresh leather and old gasoline filled my nose. It was the smell of freedom. I put the top down. I put my sunglasses on. And for the first time in my life, I drove without a destination, without a deadline, and without a passenger weighing me down. The silence in the car wasn't empty. It was full of peace.